What really happened to Korean Air Flight 007? It was supposed to be a routine flight, but instead, it became one of the most controversial and tragic air disasters of the 20th century. September 1 Street, 1983. Korean Air Flight 007, en route from New York City to Seoul, South Korea, was about to enter the history books not for how it took off, but for how it came crashing down. Flight 007 was a standard trans-Pacific journey for Korean Air, a civilian flight carrying 269 passengers and crew. Most of the people aboard were returning home to South Korea after working or studying abroad. The plane was a Boeing 747, one of the safest airliners of its time. There was nothing to suggest that the journey would be anything but routine. But hours into the flight, something went wrong. A slight deviation, an error in navigation, a mere miscalculation of coordinates led the aircraft off its intended flight path. As Korean Air 007 crossed the Pacific, it strayed into Soviet airspace, a zone that was anything but peaceful during the height of the Cold War. It was an innocent mistake, but to the Soviet Union, in the midst of heightened Cold War tensions, it would be seen as something much more dangerous. The Soviets were on high alert. During the Cold War, anything flying near Soviet airspace could be perceived as a threat, a potential American spy mission. The radar blip, a commercial airliner, was quickly identified as a potential enemy. The response was swift and violent. Fighter jets were scrambled to intercept, but Korean Air 007, completely unaware of the danger, continued on its course. Soviet pilots tried, unsuccessfully, to contact the plane. The aircraft failed to respond, but the question remained, was it really an innocent mistake? At 6:26 p.m. local Soviet time, tragedy struck. A Soviet fighter jet fired a missile. The explosion was catastrophic. In a moment, the 747 was torn apart. Pieces of the wreckage plummeted into the Sea of Japan. 269 people, including 23 Americans, were aboard Korean Air Flight 007. All but a few perished. But the dead were not the only victims. The world was now faced with the haunting question, was it an accident, or something far darker? In the aftermath, the Soviet Union denied responsibility for the attack, claiming that Korean Air Flight 007 had violated their airspace and failed to respond to warnings. According to the Soviets, the plane was thought to be a spy mission, and their actions were justified. But the United States and its allies were furious. They accused the Soviets of cold-blooded murder, pointing out that the aircraft was clearly a civilian flight and that the missile strike was both unwarranted and unnecessary. The incident sparked a firestorm of international condemnation. The Soviet Union, under intense global pressure, attempted to defend its actions. But the world was not convinced. The question loomed, why did this happen? As investigations unfolded, a number of theories began to emerge. Was the plane truly off course due to a navigational error, or had it been deliberately diverted into Soviet airspace? Was it a case of human error? Or was there something more sinister at play? The most plausible theory was that the plane's flight path was miscalculated by the crew. But some speculated that the Soviets had intentionally provoked the incident, seeing the aircraft as a perfect opportunity for a more significant geopolitical message. A warning shot, perhaps, in the Cold War standoff. We were not fools. We knew the Americans were constantly watching us. If the Americans were sending spies, it was easy to send a message back. The mistake was ours, yes, but it was also theirs. Months after the crash, the wreckage was finally located. Divers recovered the black box, the flight recorder that could hold the answers to what really happened. As investigators pored over the data, the truth became murkier. The flight's final moments were recorded in chilling detail. The pilot seemed unaware of the impending danger. In the final minutes of the flight, communications from the cockpit showed confusion, but nothing that suggested the crew had intentionally strayed from their route. It was a pivotal moment in the Cold War, one that could have escalated into something far worse. Diplomatic talks between the United States and the Soviet Union intensified, and the event sparked widespread calls for better communication and safeguards in the air. But even today, the full story remains elusive. Was it really just a tragic mistake? Or was there a deeper, darker reason behind the attack? We may never know. Korean Air Flight 007 became a symbol of the Cold War's deadly consequences, a moment when the line between mistake and conspiracy blurred. In the years that followed, the incident was used as a reminder of the dangers of military tension and the importance of clear communication, lessons that are as relevant today as they were in 1983. The legacy of Flight 007 is a tragic reminder of how a single misstep can lead to unimaginable loss. And while the world has moved on, the questions remain unanswered, unresolved, forever haunting the skies.